She is a lawyer practicing in Delhi, but travels all around the country because she has a passion for justice. She's known for the successful challenge. You're going to love this. Successful challenge of the anti-conversion law in Himachal Pradesh. And then she has fought a wonderful battle, and she's going to tell us these stories. She's fought a wonderful battle for the victims of communal violence in Odisha. And I'm talking about Tehmina Arora. She's here all the way from Delhi. And we're so glad to have Tehmina Arora here. And welcome onto the stage as you enthrall us with your wonderful stories, Tehmina.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. In August 2010, I found myself in the middle of a mini war. There was violence going on in Kandhamal, in Orissa. Many of you will remember it was August 2008 when it first started 10 years ago. And I'd been receiving calls late into the night asking if we could help, asking if there's anything we could do when mobs were showing up outside people's homes. More than 5,000 homes had been burnt in violence that lasted for over 2 months. 290 churches were demolished. 50,000 people had been driven from their homes into forests, into relief camps, and they were surviving there. There was massacre, brutality. Kandhamal was burning, and its people were burning too. And in the middle of all of this, I, as a young lawyer, was struck by how quickly, as a church, we were willing to rush in, to give aid, to respond to that violence with relief and rehabilitation. But so few of us wanted to file those legal cases. Few of us wanted to file those legal battles. And I could understand that. I could understand why that happens, because over and over again, I've had this question thrown at me. I've seen this cycle repeated. As a Christian, we are taught to turn the other cheek. We are not called to fight those legal battles. We are called to forgive. We are called to respond with grace. And of course that is true. Of course that is true. We must turn the other cheek. But we are also called, or rather our governments are also called by the same God to do justice, to ensure peace, to ensure harmony. And it seems almost as if these values are in conflict, the I versus what the government is supposed to do. But I want to assure you that it is not. It is important for us to respond by filing these cases because we want to hold on to what the government, or rather we're wanting to hold on to this wonderful vision that we find in the preamble of our Constitution. Because what was happening in Kandhamal was a direct contrast to what our preamble says is the vision for our nation. And I'll read this to you. It says, "We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, liberty of thought, equality of status and opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation." If that does not sound like the kingdom of God to you, does that not sound like the kingdom of God? It has all the hallmarks of the kingdom of God. God calls us to this space as Christians. He calls us to find, create kingdoms, his kingdom, build his kingdom, where there is no Jew, nor Gentile, no slave, nor free, no man, no woman, where the lion will sit with the lamb, where the swords will be turned to plows. Is it not an amazing reiteration of what we see in the preamble of the Constitution. And yet, I know that this is a question that lingers. But it did not linger long, because when I stood in Kandhamal and I stood in those relief camps and I met the victims, I could understand very clearly my purpose. It was the first time in my life that I felt, or at least I understood, why I needed to be a lawyer. And I want to introduce you to some of my courageous clients. Sister Ludia, who's pictured here, witnessed a terrible massacre happen in her village. Her husband was a pastor in Kandhamal, and when he and Sister Ludia saw the mob coming to their village, their first thoughts were not to flee. Their first thoughts were to rescue those in the village. And Pastor Digal went from home to home, Christian home to home, and asked people to leave the village and rush into the forest, which was just adjacent. And as he did that, Sister Ludia and their young son went and hid at the edge of the forest and watched as the mobs came. And that the mobs burnt their homes and the neighbors' homes and other Christian houses in the village. And then the mob dragged Pastor Akbar Digal out of the fields where he was hiding. And Sister Ludia watched as this mob dragged Pastor Akbar to the center of the village and then hacked him to death. She did not move because of her son. She watched, I don't know how she watched actually, at the edge of that forest. And she recognized a few members who were leading the mob. And it is her courageous testimony in the court that led to the first ever convictions resulting in life imprisonment against members of the mob. Her testimony was courageous on two levels. Only 5 members of a 100-strong mob had been identified. Only 5 of them had been charged. Many had not even been identified. They roamed free to this day in the village that she lives in. And yet she testified, yet she spoke, because she knew she owed it not only to her husband, but she owed it to the people of Kandhamal to speak about this. And it was her resilience, her courage, that showed us in such a deep and wonderful way what it means to be a Christian. But I also want to talk to you about another case. And I talk about these laws because they have put a heavy burden on my heart. These laws are called Freedom of Religion Acts. And these laws require that every time there is a conversion in that particular state marked out in red, you must inform the district authorities that there's going to be a conversion. And these laws are problematic at various levels, but at 2 levels. One, the terms are very vague. And that means that every time, for instance, they use the word inducement. And the word inducement is defined so broadly that everything that we heard our dear brothers share previously could be seen as inducement to try to convert people. Today, there is a scandal going on about Mother Teresa's homes. Mother Teresa, they're talking about asking for the Bharat Ratna to be taken away from her. Why? Because she did to the dying and destitute what barely a few of us, except a few, like our dear brother just now shared, could do. And yet, why is she being maligned? Because she is converting people. So we took on these cases, we took on this particular challenge in Himachal Pradesh, and the courts there agreed that there is something very wrong with the law that requires to give information about something that is very private, a decision that you take with your God about changing your faith, a private decision having to be publicly announced, examined, and the courts agreed with us. Because also, they lead to terrible violence. Balu is a young, or at least was a young man when these cases started, when he had his first case registered, but he's a pastor in Madhya Pradesh. And he was charged, he and his visually impaired wife were charged under these laws. Why? Because the allegation against them was that they gave 2,000 rupees to people to convert. Ridiculous. 2,000 rupees to convert? But that's the allegation that was levied against him. And for years, he has fought these cases, and there have been multiple cases. So these laws needed to be challenged. And when we took them on in Himachal Pradesh, the court agreed with us. The court said, yes, no one should be forced to give information about their conversion ceremony to the district authorities. The state has no business, no right to ask what is the religion of another person. And the one thing that I think really stood out for us in the decision was that the court again reiterated the fact that we have a right to convert ourselves. We have a right to change religion, and that no impediment should be put on this. Now, this was the first time that the court was talking about these anti-conversion laws, because previously, in 1977, they've been upheld at the Supreme Court. So we have a long battle to fight. And in fact, this is only one step that we've been able to take, and there are many, many, in fact, 8 different laws that we still need to go after. But one of my favorite cases, and this is from in Haryana, a small church that had been shut down because what they were doing in their church was against law and order according to the local authorities. Can you imagine a church service that goes against law and order? Just the fact that you can meet today could be a possibility of law and order. And these things really get me. The fact that we cannot meet in our homes, in our churches, because somebody else seems to have a problem with that. And that church got shut down. It was told it could not meet, and in spite of repeated representations to the district authorities, there was no opportunity that was being given to them to change or to allow them to meet. No opportunity. So we went up to the High Court through dear brothers and sisters, Christian lawyers who were able to stand up and speak to the court and tell them how is it that a little church that meets in private property should not be allowed to meet. And the High Court also asked the police the same question. Why should a church not be allowed to meet? And the police immediately responded by saying, no, actually, there must have been some law and order problem, and we have to be able to sort that out before the church can meet. And what does the court do? The court says, all right, if there's a law and order problem, why doesn't the police protect the church? Every single Sunday, let there be police protection for the church so that the church can meet. Isn't it remarkable? Because that's what governments are supposed to do. That is what the police is supposed to do. The police is supposed to ask, to protect, and to make sure that we are able to live out these fundamental rights. And I think, for me especially, this has been the greatest challenge as a lawyer, as a Christian lawyer, because we always come back to this question. Justice seems to be an issue that we are individually concerned about. I have a problem, I will go to court. But as a community, while we have taken on several issues in the past and we continue to do so, there is a struggle within sometimes, I feel, to respond to these issues by taking legal recourse. Justice, liberty, fraternity, equality are corporate goals. They are goals for us as a nation. And I think about these goals, I am also compelled by my Christian duty to respond, because it is our corporate responsibility to respond to this. When I think about how all my clients have stood up so courageously to the powers and allowed us to tell their stories in courts, I'm struck by how often they are thankful to me or to us as an organization. And I say this with the deepest sense of humility. We're doing nothing. We are only showing up for a battle that has already been won by God, of course, but also because of the rights we have in our Constitution. We are showing up, and we don't win every case we get, More often we lose, actually, but I don't like to say that in public, so please delete that. Um, but if we don't show up, we have lost already. If we don't show up for these battles, we have already lost them. So I would encourage each one of us to think about showing up and engaging. I like this Franciscan benediction very much because I think we have always seen Jesus as mild and meek. He's a God who is slow to anger, abounding in love. But we are also called to be angry. We are called to be restless at the things that grieve the heart of God. Let us not get too comfortable with injustice. Let us not allow it to dehumanize us. We see so much of it around us that we feel there is nothing we can do. That is not true. I can tell you, Sister Ludia, Balu, the countless other clients I represent are thankful that we stood with them. And there are battles that you and I will be called to fight. We need to be able to stand up, speak up, and engage. I want to leave you with just these words. What are you going to do with the talents that God has given you? How will you engage? And I find great solace in the words of Micah. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. Thank you very much.